You're saying by that definition of God, I see this kind of goes back to what I'm saying initially.
I'm not defining it. Elijah defined it.
Okay, so as Elijah defines God.
It's defined that way in Jonah, too.
Okay, so as...
Cardinal Newman also defined it that way.
As I'm sure you know many people who've defined it that way. And it's impressive. You're a very knowledgeable person.
I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm just pointing out to you how God is defined in the Old Testament.
All right. So to respond to that, I do think there are lots of interesting ways to define God. And that goes back to my kind of opening
Then how do we
statement.
specify what we're arguing about?
We use context clues, or again, it goes back to my example of the Mona Lisa.
I'm defining God as conscience.
Okay, so that's interesting, but then you're kind of expanding the meaning of God.
No, I'm not. That's how it's defined in the Old Testament.
Okay, so
in Elijah and in Jonah.
Sure. So whoever. So some.
It's not whoever.
Okay.
Elijah is one of the major Old Testament prophets.
All right.
He's equal in stature to Moses.
Okay.
So it's not arbitrary.
All right. So that is interesting, but it's not relevant to the context with which I am using the term God.
It's directly relevant. Atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
You
accept conscience as a guide, and conscience is one of the defining characteristics of God in the Old Testament.
I think you're being intellectually disingenuous.
In what way?
Because, again,
I asked you if you believe that conscience guided you.
You just asked me a question, and then you stopped me from answering it. In this setting, you understand the way I am using the term God and belief.
Not in the least. I don't understand how you're using it in the least. That's why I'm trying to define it. My definition of God as conscience is a lot more precise and oriented than your definition of the God that you hypothetically disbelieve in.
It's irrelevant to the fault lines of this debate.
How is it irrelevant?
Because in common parlance, when we're talking about atheists, God, belief, not belief,
I
we're
don't
not
care
talking
about common parlance. I'm trying to get to something fundamental.